The European Union is also expanding its list of targets for sanctions. Leaders in Europe are hoping that this latest round of sanctions will deter those trying to undermine that country's stability. Rachelle Akuffo has more.
Sunday's controversial referendum held by anti-Kiev supporters in eastern Ukraine. Ongoing violent clashes between anti-government activists and police. Events that created a recipe for further sanctions from the European Union. Leaders from 28 EU governments attended the Organization for Security and Cooperation meeting in Brussels Monday to determine the breadth of those sanctions.
We already have the possibility of extending previous sanctions, and that is what we have done today by adding 13 new names of Ukrainian and Russian authorities, as well as the identities of 2 enterprises, which have infringed the international agreements and rules concerning the sovereignty of Ukraine.
This latest round of blacklisted individuals and companies sanctioned brings the total to 61.
I have no doubt that both Washington and Brussels, as well as other European capitals, know about the essence of what is happening in Ukraine. It is therefore more discouraging to see the position that our Western parties are trying to hold, attempting to turn everything upside down and attempting to shun responsibility for the actions of the regime that they had effectively put into power, and placing this responsibility on the Russian Federation.
Some European ministers are skeptical that Russia is doing all it can to de-escalate the situation in Ukraine.
We had President Putin the other day saying 2 things. That he thought that the so-called referendum should be delayed. That did not happen, and he could possibly say that he doesn't have control of events. He said the other thing, that he was going to withdraw Russian forces from the border. That did not happen.
Without seeing conclusive signs that Russia is helping to calm the situation in Ukraine, European leaders are not ruling out the possibility of broadening the criteria to impose further sanctions.
The European Union is not yearning for the introduction of the second phase of the current sanctions, an escalation of economic sanctions leading to an economic war. That is not our point or aspiration. Our point is to calm down the situation in Ukraine.
Some EU leaders think Ukraine's upcoming presidential elections could be an opportunity to further dialogue between the eastern opposition and the leadership in Kiev. If the violence that surrounded Sunday's anti-government referendum is a sign of what's to come for the May 25th presidential elections, Ukrainians and the EU may not get a chance to open that dialogue. Rachelle Akuffo, CCTV.